Well, hello everybody. How's the day going? Welcome to The Lore You Know, Episode 5, The Divine Pantheon, or at least as much as we can get through today. Hi, Sarah. How's your day going?
Hi, Jeremy. I'm doing well. I actually got out of bed this morning in time for this. Didn't have to run
Yay!
to the computer.
Excellent.
It's
So,
only 11 a.m. my time. So,
I
and
know
while
we were
we're in
talking about
our
with the whole pandemic thing right now. It's just harder
yeah,
when you don't have to be somewhere at a certain time. It's harder
no,
to get up if you don't
it
have
really is. It
to.
really is. Like, oh yeah, getting up is just. I don't want to get up in the morning. Then it's like, oh, your boss is like, you have a 6 a.m. meeting with the East
Right?
Coast, and I'm like, you're evil.
No.
You're cruel.
The sun's not even up
No.
yet.
Yeah, actually it is up, but only barely.
Right? It's
Anyway,
peeking over. So yeah,
not today.
we've had 4 episodes before this, and in every one of those we have mentioned the gods and like kind of who they are a little bit, but we've never actually focused on them. So today
Yeah,
we're gonna go down the list of at least the victors, the top 8, the big kahunas,
big guys, big
right?
kahunas, and see where we get from there. I think
And you want to start with everyone's favorite,
everyone's favorite. How can you
Vangle.
not love Vangle? Now, I got to preface this by saying I will pronounce things wrong, as I always preface.
That is
I will
completely
pronounce
fair.
things wrong. Although I did discover, I was doing a little bit of research on this yesterday just to prepare for today, and I discovered that they've changed the way some of them are pronounced
What?
in the publication. So, like Belsmith in the original Divine and the Defeated is Belsameth, and then in I think in the new book it's Belzameth. So, damn you.
What?
So they're not even consistent. So, so yeah, I don't want to talk about spelling because something's just
Yeah,
not the
hopefully I
gods,
got
but
the
other
spelling
things are
right
just
on all of the like placards
yeah,
for the videos.
the
Hopefully.
gods they didn't change the names of,
Okay.
but like little there's a few organizations in on Skarn that they changed the spelling of, and there's some inconsistencies there depending on the book. So, but I remind everyone again that this was written over the course of 4 years, like 40 books by about 3 guys
Right?
in their 20s. And I want to kick this off today by saying happy birthday, Joe Carrigar, one of the original creators of Scarred Lands.
Happy birthday.
40 something today. So kudos on that. And
Yay.
I'm older than him. So, so tells me they were little kids when they wrote this. So, and I think they did a bang up amazing job when you take into account. So when I complain about the books, it is through love and enjoyment and sympathy. So because they are amazing books, yes, there are a few inconsistencies, but it makes it more fun, honestly. Gives us something to do. So kicking off, Fangle the Ravager.
Yay.
He's called. He's one of he's to me the villainiest god of the Scarred Lands. As such a big deal in D&D, the alignment, the whole wrapping a god around an alignment, and he's meant to embody chaotic evil.
Yeah.
And that he does well. He was the first god to be born on top of Mount Nemul in Ashrak, which I touched on before.
Yeah.
By Lethine, the Titan of Storms, Thulkas, the Titan of Volcanoes and Fire, and Churn, the Titan of Plagues. And I'm like, who would make a baby with Churn?
Right?
This is Churn's only kid. 3 of them got together. And the 3 of them got together. So it's like, what happened there? I think it's the only time
Lethine.
3 Titans. Lethine, I was like, I needed more friends.
Yeah.
I don't know. Or Lethina? There's another pronunciation.
Is there?
I've heard both. I don't know. I think it's Lethine. Oh God. Fran, I'm not going to repeat what Fran just said. So anyways, first, the Titans figured out they could intermingle their essences or whatever they did. Did they do the do? I don't know, but they did something. And they gave birth to Vangle. And Vangle is just sort of the embodiment of just mayhem and destruction and violence. And he's unique in the gods in that he doesn't get his power through prayer specifically, the way he gets it is through his followers and pretty much anybody just being destructive and being warlike in battle. So the more battles going on Skarn, the more juice he gets. And he's really the only one who gets juice that way. He's a god of war, but he's not the god of war. He's just war is it's in his bucket, but he's really the god of battle and gnashing of teeth, barbarity. He appears like this big, gnarly, dark matted hair. It's all like matted in blood because he's Vangel. Dreadlocks with like bloody dreadlocks, and he's got these 2 gleaming battle axes that are, like caked in viscera that he carries with him. So I imagine he must smell. And he just kind of stomps around, and I think he kind of wears like, kind of loincloth kind of like thing. Anyway, you get the picture here. So so the picture has him in armor. It's not necessarily described in armor, but he's Vangel. He can wear whatever he wants. But the concept of like a belt of skulls, very Vangel. So just picture that. He doesn't have a lot of organized religion, I would say, because like I said, he doesn't really need churches.
Yeah.
Unlike all the other gods, he doesn't really need them, and so he doesn't really seek them out. But he does have several groups that do follow him and worship him. In Gelspad specifically, there's these horsemen. It's kind of barbaric horsemen who run around in northeast corner on what is now called the Plains of Lead. A lot of background there, as Lead, and I think this was an inconsistency thing that they tried to retcon. Historically there was the Empire of Lead, Lede, and they covered a good 2/3 or more of Gelspad historically back in the day, way pre-war, pre-Charduni invasion, pre-war, and they were a huge empire, lasted several thousand years. And there was a place called the Plains of Lead, which was actually, I think, now in a different area of Gelspad. But this area is now called the Plains of Lead. So, But anyway, Northern Plains, a bunch of barbarians run around. They have Galdor the Deathless is one of his big guys, who's this rampaging warlord who just like stomps all over the Plains of Lead and makes trouble. There's also some orcs who worship him. Although in new Scarred lands, they've kind of shifted the orc culture a bit. Those orc cultures still exist, but they're more in pockets than in the original publications. So I'd say the majority in the original publications, the majority of the orcs were rampaging hordes. Now they're the minority. So they did shift that.
Yeah.
And they added a new dwarven city in the new publications, because orc city. Did I say dwarf? Sorry, tired. Orc city. They added to they're a playable race now. So whereas before you could play a half orc, now you can play a full orc, which cool. Like, who doesn't want to play an orc?
They're pretty amazing.
They're cool. Yeah. and pretty overpowered, because that's yeah. Well, because everything's kind of ramped up on Scarred lands, all of the playable races are a little bit more beefed up.
Yeah.
I would say everything's a little bit more beefed up. So if you're going to play Scarred lands and you're going to use stuff from the creature collection, I highly recommend using the player guide and building your characters based on that, because you will need those extra, that one little extra +2 to a stat is kind of useful.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. It's like it doesn't feel like a lot, but it's like I got like one more skill and a +2 to a stat that I wouldn't have if I was playing a regular D&D elf, but yet that little thing can make a huge difference, because the numbers are so much more mild in 5th edition than in 3.5 or Pathfinder.
Yeah.
So anyway, so Vangel got these horsemen on the Plains of Lead. There's some orcs, but that's the majority. But he also created a race during the war, right early in the onset of the war, called the Manticora, who are, to my mind, like dead on one of the best playable races of the new stuff in Scarred lands. There are these feline people. He uplifted lions, basically, and turned them into lion people, effectively. And they were his army during the war. He after the war, he basically abandons them. He's like, "Go do, I don't care."
Yeah.
And just wanders off because he's Vangel and he doesn't care. He's looking for worshippers. So a few of them are his favorites, like his Herald, who's, I don't know if you get the picture of her.
I do
love
now.
her. She, we were trying to find a name for her. I don't know what her actual name is supposed to be. I can't find it anywhere in the lore. But she's a manticora that he gave special additional powers to, and she comes in as his herald. The herald, all of the major gods have herald. Most of the demigods have heralds. I look at heralds as a great tool for GMs to use when they want to kind of push the party in a specific direction, but don't want to send an actual god to do it because that's a bit much, especially when the players or killer characters are like level 3. So wait till they're at least tier 3 before they meet a god. So heralds are a great tool to use for that, and I think. And Vangel's herald, I have used her. I used her very, very early in my campaign when the players did something dumb, and she shows up and she's like, "Don't do that! It's pissing off Vangel." And my Fran, my lovely wife, his character just sort of faces her down and is like, "No, we're gonna do what we're gonna do." And I'm like, "Honey, seriously, she's going to kill you. If you don't want to roll up a new character, I can't not kill you right now,"
Right?
because she would.
Yeah, heralds can be used as like the spray bottle for the DM. No.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, no, don't do that. Okay, so heralds are a great tool for that, and they're also just a good tool of like, we need help or whatever. I don't know, or like it's gonna be a TPK, I need a Deus Ex Herald to come in and save my party. So they're kind of a useful tool. Fran does remind me that it was actually a pretty amazing moment when I did run that in the game because it changed the direction of her character.
Nice.
Yeah, so it was cool, and one of those things that.
And not in the way that she had to roll up a new one.
No. Jervis not only survived that encounter, Jervis now appears in Wise and the Wicked. Just to give you a sense
That's awesome.
Of how an impact meeting Vangel's Herald had on him. So he's one of the Wise and the Wicked characters. Created a story arc. So anyway, that's all I can say about Vangel. He's kind of the older brother of the gods because he was the first, but yeah. Only one sibling though. Yeah. So after Vangel was made, basically Denev was like, that's scary. I need one of my own. So Denev got together with Kadam, of all Titans, who's, Kadam's touch and go. He's not too terrible. Let's get together like the Earth Mother gets together with Godzilla.
Right.
and they have Corian, who's the absolute opposite of Vangel. Also a war god, but he's lawful good. And he was literally made as a foil for Vangel because Denev was like, no.
Need some balance here.
Thing. Yeah. Like, a little bit. She's true neutral. She's very into balance. So she creates Corian. And Corian is the first god who, and all the rest of the gods follow in line here of needs followers, needs worshippers to get power. So he's the epitome of paladins. He's the paladin's paladin. He really is, and he's also the god of the forge. And his domains include fire and protection. So he's kind of that whole crafting thing, but also like, I make the armor that I use to defend you with. I make the sword, and so that's kind of his whole thing. The whole paladin kit. So think plate mail, war horse, the whole thing. He's shown as this shining paragon of light and goodness. He's like got bald head and gleaming forehead. I don't know what it is, and like big bulky guy with mighty long sword. He made a sword on Gulthaga's forge at the beginning of the war. His symbol is this it's sort of a compass thing of swords pointing out, but very, like I said, very much the paladin's paladin. he's got a bunch of paladins, or his main followers, and there's a whole city that follows Corian up in northeast Gelspad, kind of close to the Plains Lead. Actually, funny that coincidence. I don't think so.
Yeah.
But we're the Mithril Knight, the Mithril Golem.
Yeah.
After fighting Kadam, Corian's father, goes off and wanders off into the wilderness after nearly getting destroyed by Kadam, and sort of stops on the shores of overlooking the new blood ocean that has been created off the coast, and just sort of stops and just stares, and presumably you could wake him up, but that they built a city around it, and a bunch of followers of Corian are like, this is amazing. I mean, they built this city around this colossal golem, and it's Mithril, and so his main worshippers, or one of his two main worshippers in Gelspad, I should say, were created there in the city of Mithril. Can't say Mithril's 100% lawful good, because it ain't, because it's very much a city and very much a D&D-esque city.
Yeah.
It has a seedy neighborhood. It's not perfect, but there's a heck of a lot of paladins there, and they have 4 orders, the paladins of Corian, but the main one, order of Mithril, is what's centered there. There's also iron, silver, and gold, and that have different vows and branches to Corian, and you can play a paladin in any of those. Pretty cool. The other area of Corian's followers is in the Gleaming Valley. It's more central Gelspad, more almost west coast, but not quite. And that was pretty minor in the original story. It was just these weird construct creatures called the Hollow Knights that Corian basically created to fight as his army during the war when he didn't have enough paladins, and the implication was that he invented paladins for the war itself, that it's possible that paladins didn't even exist before the war, or not certainly in a way we see them today.
Yeah.
But he created these knights, and you can read way more about them in the new books, and Fran is the expert on the Hollow Legionnaires, not me. I won't go into too many detail, but he created them, and they ended up setting up in this abandoned valley in like the mountains after the war, just to find a place to live, because they had no purpose after the war happened.
Right.
And then in the new text, they create these children called the Hollow Legionnaires, who are a playable race, and that's a brand new playable race. Hollow Knights aren't playable because they're pretty much a bunch of clone paladins, and there's not much to play, really. But because you're pretty much restricted to, like, if you want to be a paladin, you could be this identical suit of armor,
right.
of which there are several thousand identical suits of armor that walk around. But they created these children, which are more like spirits that inhabit armor, and they actually have expressions and faces and personalities, and you could be any class and any alignment for that matter. Although they kind of want you to be lawful good. They lean you, it's like, your parents are lawful good.
Right.
But you can see, that's a chaotic evil Hollow Legionnaire. Yes, it can happen. So there's kind of the other central point of Corian's followers. But yeah, Gleaming Valley, I'd say less Corian devoted than in the new version than in the original, because of that additional, very new race of the Legionnaires. So that's most of Corian. I can think off the top of my head.
I'm going to show his Herald real quick.
Herald real quick, yeah.
Which I'm pretty sure is his horse. But the art, so this is my guess. The art probably had this originally this flowing white mane that didn't scan very well.
Yes, it
so
does.
So now he looks a little bit like a donkey.
There is a flowing white mane, and there's this beautiful star on his forehead.
It's just
does
really light.
Not showing the art.
So no, his Herald is not a donkey. It is his horse.
Yeah, his name is Permenthus, according to the Defined and the Defeated.
Right.
Yeah, and as far as I can tell, probably his steed. A paladin who was a hero. Most of the heralds, pretty much all the heralds, were were major followers of the god in question, and the god, not quite all of them, most of them, and then the god uplifted them to status. They're not demigods, but they're basically epic level NPCs.
Totally.
To put it simply. So or near on epic level, if not epic level. So not every Herald is CR 20, but they're going to be in the tier 3, tier 4 range, certainly. And the gods also have pages too, and I don't really go into details on those. And there's just not every god has a page, because I don't think not every god needs one, but several of the gods have these basically messenger. So the Herald's meant to be like, something big is going on. The page is meant to be like, I have a note for you from Corian. Here you go, Barsonius. Barsonius is the uber paladin head in Mithril.
Gotcha.
I'm probably not pronouncing his name right either. He shows up a lot in if you read the old Mithril publication that came out. It's one of the first setting books that came out for Scarlands back in 2000. So moving on, who's after Corian? And Keely. Keely's my favorite. I'm not gonna be shy about that. The trickster goddess, both. Lethine and Gulaben, 2 female titans got together. No male titans, so this was fun. Got together, Wind and Ice, and they made in Keely's form, which mutable form, they say. And in Keely, they've changed in Keely a wee bit in the new lore, and I assigned male at birth, but in Keely's gender non-binary, pretty much, and just basically switches gender as they want, whenever they want,
right?
whenever is convenient,
or is completely non-binary. Because there's in Shelzar, there's some references to people who may have been in Keely that never really no one really knew for sure if the person was a man or a woman. And so today, rather than the 3rd edition book, that would just kind of be a non-binary, she didn't choose either.
Yeah, and there's a lot of non-binary, a lot of more introduction of non-binary characters in the new edition.
Yeah.
The Hollow Legionnaires, actually, going back to Corian, is a great example of that. They're just suits of armor, with the soul, but there's no reason, they're
right.
not, they don't breed like people.
Right.
There's no real reason for them to have gender. So, playing a non-binary Hollow Legionnaire is kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah.
If you want to go there. But Keely was, in the original lore, really the only representation of that. And originally, it was the Storm Goddess. So particularly when Keely went into combat, she went as the Storm Goddess version, which is the kind of the top. In this art, if you can see it, the big goddess there in the background with the giant flail.
Yeah.
And she's goddess of lightning, and she does all this stuff, summoning lightning and things with the flail. And then the trickster god, which is the male form, who's more of a gambler, rogue character, your typical I don't know, I want to say Bishi character. If you get that sense of like, just in every other anime, you've got that, like bard kind of personality,
Yeah.
sort of personality. The trickster god. And in Keely just shifts around whatever they want. And Keely has a lot of followers all across Skarn, very popular with rogues and in chaotic neutral, in case I hadn't mentioned, the true god of chaos here. And there's a whole city devoted to Keely, Shelzar, and south central Gelspad. One of the oldest cities on Skarn that has gone through many, many transformations over thousands of years and has survived not getting the shit beaten out of it by various titans by the skin of its teeth in many cases, as all of the cities around it did, and recently, certainly because of Keely's influence, and they are celebrated extensively. And yes, their high priestess on Shelzar, non-binary Aishela, who I have kind of a crush on, because she looks, she is amazing. They. Shayla is a they. I'm terrible with pronouns. Oh, that's in Keeley for you. And like I said, I have a big love for Keeley. There's also few followers of Inkili throughout some other areas in Skarn, including Otanazu, the Canyon of Souls, which is this, like, I think Grand Canyon level almost that cuts across one of the biggest mountain ranges in Gelspad, and there's all these winds that whip through it. So Inkili's very popular there, goddess of wind, and there's cities on either end of the giant canyon, and the whole infrastructure around Oshinazu is getting people from one end of the canyon to the other successfully for trade. And so Inkili's followed there. And there's some other random places throughout Skarn where you could run into Inkili followers. But I'd say those are probably the big areas. Correct me if I'm missing something too.
I can't think of anything off the top of my head. And I've brought up her Herald as well, Risa. Risa?
Risa?
Yeah.
Risa. Making me look it up. I honestly don't. I haven't done much with the Heralds, I admit that.
That's okay.
Yeah. The only one I really used was Vangles. and one other. So, yeah, I don't know much about Risa. But you can find out about Risa and all the Heralds and pages and the Divine and the Defeated. Absolutely. If you really want to do more research. Okay, moving on. Opposite of Inkili would be Harada. The god of law. Lawful neutral. And my least favorite god of Skarn, and I will please Harada to no end. He's the judge. Creation of Denev and Gulthane, which is probably like the nicest parents you could have. Honestly, it's like Harada has no reason to complain about parental abuse. Probably the only god of Skarn who wasn't abused as a kid. Gulthane is pretty nice, honestly. You know, for being sad and pathetic, having no no face, but and Denev is just, you know, goddess of the earth, and she's the good titan, or titan of the earth. She's the good titan. So he was probably the only one not abused as a child. He's considered the wisest god. He's really the god of civilization, of cities, of structure. He's also the god of wealth, and I would argue capitalism. He was the first god to discover the divine realms, the outer realms, and how the gods left Skarn and then ended up in their heavens, in their respective heavens and hells. And he was also the first one to really be like, maybe we need to stop our parents and, you know, put them away because they keep doing things. And I think a lot of it is because he was trying to make cities, and then Kadam would come in and break them like a tile of Legos and it was like, nope, can't do this anymore. I like my cities. And so he was like, no. So he appears as like kind of this regal but rather cold individual. Wears sleeveless tunic in a lot of his description, and has that weird creepy crown over his head.
It just kind of floats there, yeah.
Yeah, it just sort of floats there. Not.
I think it's there. I think it floats rather than sits on his head, so that his perfect hair doesn't get messed up.
Yeah, and they're all. I mean, I would say pretty much all the gods have some kind of an like ego boost thing around their visage. That's like, I'm cool. You know, like I have a funky crown or funky wings or whatever it is, and that's his kind of conceit to that. You know, Corian's got the big sword. You know, they've all got something.
Right.
So the floating crown is Harada's deal, and he's got that great hammer. That's his weapon, is a hammer, of course. City's hammers. It's named Final Judgment. Like, come on, and it's got like these weird faces on it, of a demon and an angel, and it's all there. Harada actually has sort of 4 elements of his worship. So if you go to one of his temples, there'll be like 4 sections of it. And he's known as the judge, the lawgiver, the sage, and the king of wealth. So think like if there's a dispute, Harada has all of the judges pretty much in his pocket. If you're a judge in the Galespad, you probably follow Harada in some way. And then certainly the lawgiver, here's all the books and rules you need to follow. And then knowledge is his big thing. Mostly he gathers knowledge and then hoards it and doesn't really share it very much. So there's that annoyance. And then wealth, money, everything about Harada is like gold and stuff. In fact, so there's one major area in Galespad where they follow Harada. There's actually 3 or 4, but there's one major one called City of Harad, named after him. And we frequently get the names mixed up. Harad is the city, Harada is the god, not vice versa. I frequently get these mixed up. They are the most strict city-state in all of Galespad, and it is crazy, the rules, and it's so severe. You can get penalized, you can get fined for smiling or holding hands in the city of Rod. Yeah, it's the only place I'm aware of in Galespad where homosexuality is not only illegal, actually it's the only place I know where it's illegal, but it is not only illegal, it's anathema. You can actually get killed.
Wow.
At burned at the stake level of punishment for sodomy and things like that. So because we want Scarred Lands to be an open, egalitarian, wonderful, but you gotta have a nasty sense somewhere, right?
Having an open and inclusive world doesn't mean that everyone in the world is that way, unfortunately, because look at our world, it's just that way.
Yeah, but at least it's in an isolated pocket.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is it's true for the city of Harad. It is not true for all worshippers of Harada. And there are other cities that worship Harada that aren't that restrictive, that are way more open-minded. So it just seems to be that one. So it's like fine, if you're going to be that way, go there, go to Harad, live there. If you're going to be like that, if you're not, leave, and they will be like, get out or we kill you, because so there is that if you're gay, before you do anything, you might want to emigrate. Go live somewhere else. So that's just not that far. They'll welcome you. Get out of our city. So that's sort of the attitude.
So Fran does say one of those notable places that Harada has worship.
Yeah,
isn't like that is the Gleaming Valley. Yeah.
Which is just you can be whatever you want. We don't care. And they do worship Harada in the Gleaming Valley, as well as the Library of Lokil are big followers of Harada as well, and that's a giant library bastion of knowledge. Really, the only reason to go to the city of Harad is because of their knowledge, because of or if you're trading with them for goods or something like that. But they have a lot of banks. But they have a lot of universities and libraries and things like that too. And they are very hoardy of the knowledge. So good luck extracting information out of them. So Harada, I think, is an interesting god. He's the one who made the calendars. He's the one who really organized things post-war. And a lot of and Keely was like, "Go you! I don't care. Have fun with that." But you can't name a day of the week after me because meh. But when you look at the Scarred Lands calendar, which is available on DriveThruRPG, if you look at the Scarred Lands calendar, all the days of the week, there's all the gods have a day of the week named after them, except in Keely, which is called Keely's day of the week is Wild Day, much to Harada's discomfort. So. Yeah, and he's also worshipped in a few other places. But you can find Harada, but there are places where his priests are actually unwelcome. Like if you're a priest of Harada and you try to go to Shalzar.
Yeah, I could see that.
You want to hide that holy symbol. You don't want to flaunt that.
I feel like in Shalzar, it wouldn't necessarily be the go-to to go and hurt that priest or that cleric or whatever, but they'd go and be like, okay, let's convert this guy because
Yeah. We actually made a joke in Vigilant, what Harada's heaven is like, and they're like they're describing the different heavens of all the gods, and they're like, and Harada's heaven, which is where all your sums add up correctly. What is it like? Because
Right?
these characters are very chaotic characters, have kind of no idea, can't even imagine what Harada's heaven would be like.
Right.
So there's that. Okay. Moving on. Chardoon, I think, is my next one. These are roughly in order. I think the order was kind of in order of birth. I don't know if it actually is in order of birth, but I had some reason for this order. Yeah. Chardoon is one of the last majors. He's he's also a god of law, but he's the god of law and evil, basically. And he's the slaver is his moniker. And he's, I think, one of the more, Vangal is scary. But Vangal is scary in kind of a random, bloody, you kind of know where he stands sort of way. Chardoon is scary in a different way. He has a lot of power, and he's complicated, and I think he's one of the most complicated gods of Skarn. He's child of Gormoth and Mormo, two people who really shouldn't have been together because they hated each other like no end. Gormoth, at the end of his epoch, Mormo poisoned him with these worms, and they've hated each other ever since. But epochs later, they get together and have a kid on Mount Namul, and the story goes that Mormo basically coerced him into it, that she did something and extracted the essence out of him against his will. So, great opening there on the kid. It's like, good. And it's pretty much Chardoon is very much the most abused god, I would say, arguably, on Skarn. Maybe, Keely's probably up there because Gullivan and Lethean really weren't nice to them either, but Mormo and Gormoth saw each other in Chardoon, so Mormo would look at Chardoon, think of Gormoth, and then beat him up, and then Gormoth would look at Chardoon, think of Mormo, and beat him up. So he was incredibly abused by both of his parents, and it kind of, their sadistic stuff, and I don't even say just physical abuse, but emotional and mental abuse too. It was just a lot of sadistic stuff, and it's not an excuse for his behavior later, but it's certainly an explanation of him becoming this basically sadist himself. And he, as part of why I think he's so complicated and interesting, he appears to be this incredibly handsome, regal individual from pretty much the waist up. Blonde hair, laurel leaves, the whole deal. But then from the waist down, his toga is covered in blood and bone splinters and bone dust, and his sandaled feet are stained in blood, and it's just like, what is going on here with you? Yeah, and then he's got this war scepter, bloody stained and covered in this wreath of thorns. It's presumably smacks people up with, and his eyes are like haunted and disturbing and red and just really like, you need a will save to look him in the eye. Pretty much. So, and he shows up. He actually shows up in the Serpent Amphora saga, really right at the beginning as a serious piece of that too, threat. He probably has more followers than just about any god on Skarn, at least certainly in Gelspad, and is just crazy, stupid powerful. Known as the Great General, he has 3 major large areas that follow him, and a lot of it is because they're conquerors. And not everybody in these countries follow him, just the leaders, but they have so much influence that they can push his doctrine out wide. The biggest one would be the Calastian hegemony, which is in the southeast corner of Gelspad. Consists of 6 countries that have unified into an empire. Only 2 of the countries, Calastia itself and the country of Lagini, are heavy Chardoon worshippers. The other countries have other gods that they favor, but Chardoon's belief is still spread in all 6 of those countries because of the Calastian overarching rule in the hegemony. So loose empire, I'd say, but government certainly is controlled by the Calastians. And then there's another nation to the very little is known about them. Another nation to the far west coast on a little peninsula called, and I'm going to pronounce this wrong, Dunahne. I
Right.
can never say that right. And it is like East Germany, kind of the Cold War bad.
Yeah.
It is stark. It is very restrictive. The North Korea actually is a better paradigm. Actually, honestly, it is North Korea levels of bad. Slavery is the norm. Like everybody is either a noble or a slave. There's no middle class in that country, and on the edge of the peninsula that cuts the country from this massive desert, so there's not like there's anything there anyway, is this wall of skulls, of bone and skulls, and it's like hundreds of feet tall, and well guarded. And where they got all the bodies, I don't know, but they've built over time this wall of bone that it's super creepy. And their main exports are metallurgy, and they actually have pollution there, and it's just a really dark, grim place. And they follow Chardoon with the whips and the chains, and it's just main exports, pollution, slaves. Yeah, it's really fun there. And if you're traveling on the west coast, you have to kind of go around this peninsula, and believe me, there's people who go way around this peninsula to avoid these people. And then the third major followers of Chardoon are the Chardooni dwarves.
Right.
He actually took dwarves and made his own version of dwarves, and they're primarily located in Gelspad. No, not Gelspad, in Termana. Their empire is in the east coast of Termana, north of the jungles and east of the Elves. And they had somehow, prior to the Divine War, had conquered their way across Gelspad, starting in Duhane. In fact, I'm pretty sure you can find Chardooni dwarves in that repressive country. My guess, and this is all me, is why they went that way when Termana is on the other side of the world from them, and the other direction. Because why didn't they conquer from the southeast if they came in boats? My thought is they probably came in some kind of teleportation gate from their lands to Duhane. I am not pronouncing that right, but the place with the creepy place. And they went and conquered Gelspad, and then the war kind of pushed them back, and now they're pretty much back just back to Termana. And I wouldn't say Chardoon has abandoned the Chardooni dwarves, but he's certainly taken a step back in terms of interacting with them a lot, and they feel very lost because he's put all of his focus into Calastia and their emperor Verduk. And Verduk has been happily expanding, including expanding into Termana.
Right.
Because Verduk is actually, there's basically a 7th location in the Calastian hegemony, which is a small country in Termana that he's placed a foothold in. So Chardoon's definitely put more of effort into Verduk than into the dwarves he made. So he's kind of a dick, but a complicated, interesting, horrible god. Any questions about Chardoon?
So let's talk about Gerald for a sec, because he's the Herald of Chardoon.
Oh, he's interesting.
But he's he wasn't a worshipper of Chardoon. He was a paladin of Corian.
Yeah, who kind of went all blackguard and got twisted, and ended up becoming his herald. And there's this whole giant the Annals of Light, that's Bible reading level of stuff, of lore, that talks about his story, and it's just really fascinating. And Chardoon, basically his attitude is really, nobody knows how to do it right, so they're going to do it my way, and I'm going to enforce my way because everybody else is a moron. is really Chardun's perspective. He really thinks that every other god, every other way is just stupid and wrong, and this is the way things need to be because this is the way you make civilization work. This is the way you keep out all the Titan spawn and all the bad things. If you follow
Right.
my policy, this is the way it works. He's just very, very much a totalitarian, fascist, arguably, and he really has no respect for any of the gods except a little bit of respect for Corian. But that's about it. Even Harada, he's an idiot, which is crazy because Harada is super smart and scholar knowledge. But he's just like they're all, and it's not. It's all a front, really, and that's just why I think Chardon is so interesting because you look back at that upbringing, and he's just a little scared little puppy inside, kicked puppy, who's just had this horrible stuff happen to him.
Right.
And I think that's in so much why he's like he is and how complicated he is. You know, if you could find that little warm inkling of a spot in Chardun's cold heart, it's not a thing.
Right. We just keep looking and it's not there.
Yeah, no, and he's sitting on his throne of bone, figuring out ways to take over all of the other heavens. I can tell you that. And our hells, and he's not. He's not. But and he does some. He's lawful, so he's very. He doesn't betray people. He's not a trickster god, but he's definitely. He finds the legal way to screw you over. You know. He'll find the loophole in the contract that will make it so things go his way.
Right.
So and that loophole got him his Herald. You know.
Yeah.
He used one of those loopholes to get him this former Paladin to follow him.
It's interesting because so in the there's like almost a full page of quotes from the Annals of Light, which is essentially the saga of Gerald.
Yeah.
And I like how Corian's priests and paladins use it as an example of how as a paladin you can go above and beyond what you're supposed to do. So you can get too self-righteous, which is for a paladin to be like, you can be too self-righteous. I'm like, what?
And that is a problem. And I can get into that with some of Madriel's sex and Corian's sex, but that is truly a problem, because they're. I'll get into that when we get to Madriel.
Okay. Yeah.
Because there's this order of it's in the Madriel text. There's this order that are just they go too far, but actually I'll skip Tannel, then I'll talk about Madriel and go back to Tannel. Don't let me forget. So let's go to Madriel the Redeemer because this will get into that a little bit. Because talk about Madriel for a bit. So Madriel is neutral good. She's the healer. She's goddess of the sun, goddess of light. She's peaceful, merciful. She doesn't fight unless she has to. It's sort of just if I lived on Skarn, and I would hate to live on Skarn, but if I lived on Skarn, I would follow Madriel. Like, no brainer. As much as I love Keely, Madriel is like the bomb. I love Keely as an author and a creator. As a person, as a human being, Madriel is the best. I can't say she's infallible, but she's as close to infallible as I think, in my opinion, as any god is on Skarn. She's the mighty angel. She's got a spear and shield to fight you. She's actually has wings. Gods don't really have wings, but Madriel does, and they end in these cool peacock feathers at the bottom. So when she's goddess of healing and goddess of marriage and home, and says she sometimes sends her avatar to weddings. You know. She doesn't have. She has a lot of followers. She doesn't have there aren't any specific countries that follow her except Vesh, but she does have a lot of stuff. You know, in terms of that, like you can find followers of Madriel all over Ghelspad easily, just because she's like, you know, I want to be healed. Follower of Madriel, and they're very merciful and they'll go wherever they're needed. But I was getting into why did I transition to Mandrill here? There was an organization that's fights against churn diseases, Order of the Morning Sky, and they've been known to go too far. And there's some diseases, some plagues of churn that they believe are just and that they have not been able to cure, despite the various mighty healing magics of the goddess. Diseases get so bad that they've been known to just burn a city down to keep the plague from spreading. And that means the death of innocents. It means the death of innocents, but it's these people die so that millions don't. And it's easy to see how that can go too far.
Yeah.
And in terms of followers of, and there's paladins of Corian who are also involved in that, and who look and seek out these these Titan spawn infected things, and this kind of slash and burn policy where there's no redemption, there's no path to redemption for you because of how corrupted you have become. We just put you down, and there's finding that line as a follower. You could easily cross that.
Yeah.
And you can find it's very to play a paladin of Corian or a follower of Madriel to go over that line. That's a fun play right there, and you can do a lot with that.
Yeah.
In terms of like we went too far into that whole, because the Titan spawn are such a big threat to Skarn. I mean, to the point where the evil and good gods allied together to fight them, that then they're still seen as such a big threat that it's just very easy to blur that line.
Mm-hmm.
And it's less about alignment and mercy and what's good and what's to whatever needs to be done, it needs to be done. You know, if it means Churn doesn't come back or Gorak doesn't come back, we have to do what we need to do and cross that one.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's Madriel. And Madriel's, I don't know if you
I'm just going to show her Herald real quick because you were mentioning, the Herald showing
Yeah.
up during weddings. And I'm not, even though they're called the healer, I am not 100% sure I want this person showing up at my wedding. Might cause a panic.
No, Madriel would send her avatar.
Oh.
Yeah, not her Herald.
Yeah, her Herald
Yeah,
is a good healing creature, but totally creepy looking.
Yeah. Yeah, totally creepy looking. Yeah, this is not a human. It's just the healer.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to see this. I want to see her show up on a battlefield.
Totally. On your side.
Sure. On your side. Yeah.
So I think
farmers would pray to her and be rewarded of their faith. I think that because Madriel is the goddess of the sun, and one of the things Madriel does, actually, her heaven overlooks the sun, and she kind of keeps tabs on what Thulkas is doing on the sun, and so he's the Titan of fire, volcanoes, and who was trapped on the sun at the end of the war, and Thulkas, while he apparently likes being on the sun, is not happy about being in prison in a general sense. Right. And he's actually been known to send kind of an invasion force from the sun to Madriel's heaven. And Madriel's heaven sounds like, to me, one of the grooviest heavens. It's like idyllic and just really peaceful, and kind of, if you're going to be somewhere for the rest of your soul's existence, it's a pretty nice place to be, to chill. Your choices on the good side aren't, like, Corian sounds kind of boring, and Tannels sounds kind of, I don't want to be a deer, because you basically turn into an animal. Madriel sounds like the most kind of interesting. But there are problems because there's these fire giants coming in and trying to disrupt things.
Well, it gives solar flares an entirely new
concept.
It's just Thulkas trying to grab you.
Yeah, so just imagine fire giants invading heaven. It's not good. So Madriel has that little problem as well. But so you can do all sorts of things with that if you want to be like, get into the divine planes if you get at that higher level. I don't know how that looks in 5th edition, but I'd love to see it. How does Tyr 3 and 4 look in 5th edition.
Yeah.
But I certainly got played around with that in the old 3X days. Madrigal. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna. I should go back. I think I'm gonna go back to Tannel before I go on to the next one, even though it's less of a transition. Tannel, the Huntress, daughter of Runruk and Denev. Another tragic tale. I do like Tannel. She's very much a paradigm of Demeter, of Diana, or the Greek version, Artemis.
Mm-hmm.
The goddess of the hunt. She's an archer and a bard, singer. Early on in her life, she was the goddess of fertility, sex, and nature and abundance. Then some bad stuff went down.
Yeah.
And very beautiful Tannel discovered that her father, Prinruk, was very attracted to her. And despite her rejection, he wouldn't say no.
Yeah.
And he basically coerced her and raped her, and very violently. And Tannel just sort of disappeared for a couple years after that. And a winter actually hit Gelspad during that time. The winter was longer and harsher, and a lot of people believe it was because the goddess of spring, something had happened to her. And then after 2 years, she comes back with a daughter, Idra, Runruk's daughter. And it's said that those aspects of Tannel, goddess of fertility and sex, went to become Idra's area instead of Tannel's. Tannel remains goddess of nature, but she's now more the goddess of coping with abuse in a lot of ways. She's the goddess of those who've been mistreated, women and children, as well as animals and anything along those lines. Less merciful, I'd say. She's chaotic good, if I didn't make that clear. So she's a little less merciful, I'd say, than Madriel, because she's been known, like, if she finds a sick, wounded animal in the forest, she wouldn't try to nurse it until it died naturally. She would put it out of its misery. And she's more prone to put something out of its misery than if she sees as her mercy, then because their life goes on and they get go to heaven or get reincarnated. So she doesn't see it that way. Then trying to, whereas Madriel would be like, no, we must heal it. Let's try. She'd be like, yeah. So there's that difference between Madriel and Tannel. But she's big defender of anybody who's been abused, any race or person or gender, and will beat the shit out of abusers, so
Yay.
Tannel, help me from my abusive husband. I will send help, So,
giant flaming arrow just shoots down.
Yeah, exactly. But she also, because she looks to those who are lost, one other group that follows her now are the Elves, as many of the Elves who followed the elf god who died, those who followed him, particularly in Gelspad, followed Tannel. And they've found succor in her a lot, her and Denev. And her and Denev are connected in a lot of ways. Those who follow Denev have kind of naturally gravitated toward, despite the alignment different, have naturally gravitated toward Tannel as the goddess of nature. Her domains include animals, chaos, plants. Those are kind of all given, but also travel, trickery, and luck. Kind of overlapping with Keely in terms of trickery and luck. But because she's definitely known for travel, she does not stay in one place very long. If you run into Tannel, you will not run into Tannel in that location again. Don't expect her to be there tomorrow. She's always on the move. She's worshipped in Vesh along with Madriel. She's worshipped in the Ganges Forest by the Elves, and those are kind of her two main areas in Gelspad, but she's also worshipped a lot by just nature-loving people all over Gelspad. Rangers in particular follow her a lot. Some of the Manticora have started following her, who felt abandoned by Vangal, who are a little more good-leaning, and various other kind of nature-y people. kind of a lot of Tannel. She's got these cool foxes. I don't know if they're in the new creature collection, Tannel's foxes, that are kind of a creature that that are associated with her, and sometimes show up as messengers of Tannel.
Nice.
I used to pronounce it Tennille. I think it's Tannel though. Tannel. I don't know.
I say Tannel, so yeah.
Yeah. But her, she also has hounds, and her Herald is a big hunting hound.
Yeah.
Not unlike her father, Henruk, had hounds too, but they were much scarier and not quite so nice. Whereas she's got this big, you kind of want to wrap your arms around a big dog.
Totally.
I like her Herald Gara. So it's like you find this big, giant, huge. I mean, huge. This dog is not dogs. This dog is elephant-sized.
Right.
You know, this huge dog come your way, but he's like just wants to lick you on the face and say hello. That would be Tannel's Herald. Kind of more her stuff. I think. Any thoughts about Tannel?
I can't think of anything.
Okay. Now I know I said Chardun was the most complicated god. I may have been exaggerating a bit because I think, in terms of my head, it would be Belsmith or Belzamith. So Madriel has several siblings, but primarily her twin sister, also child of Mormo and Mesos. I didn't mention, Madriel's parents are Mormo and Mesos. Belsmith. I love Belsmith so much. I do a lot with Belsmith.
I mean, she is a great plot point, I'll tell you that.
She is a phenomenal plot interest. She was a major character in the Forsaken trilogy. She's certainly going to be a player in the later books of Through Shadows and Dreams, should we write them. And I absolutely love her. She's complicated. So it's neutral evil. And it's Madriel's the absolute opposite of Madriel. They were identical twins when they were born. And when they were young, they had no particular leaning toward morality. But as they grew older, as Madriel went to the light, Belsmith went to the dark. Madriel's the goddess of the sun. Belsmith is the goddess of the moon, or the one of the moons. And in every major way, she tries to be the absolute polar opposite of her twin sister. And she is more a god of trickery than the god of trickery. Anyway, despite being neutral evil, she's not even chaotic, but she is such a goddess of trickery. Intentionally tricks Inkili to prove that she can do it. And I'm not kidding. She had Inkili fooled for years. And will disguise herself as Madriel frequently, and will fool Madriel's followers. There's an entire sect out there who worship what they think is Madriel's shadow. They think they're followers of Madriel.
Yeah.
But they worship this sort of dark version of it's just Belsmith.
Yeah.
But they don't know it's Belsmith. And they're like, we worship Madriel's shadow. We're healers. We worship Madriel. No, you're not. You're worshiping
Belsmith.
Belsmith.
It's not like when she pulls off the disguise, she looks any different either, because they look alike. So it's not like she pulls off.
But she's changed how she looks. She's a natural blonde. Believe me. She shows up with dark hair. I know that's a dye job. She's dark hair. She tries not to look like Madriel. She tries to, she does not let those blonde roots grow in. I can tell you that. it's goddess. It's magic. They will not. She's permanently changed her hair color. I'm pretty sure, to black. And she also you could describe it as the hatred of her heart shows through in her aspect. She is amazingly gorgeous, but she also frequently appears as sort of this vulture hag. Actually, I would say hag. Hag is the wrong word because it's such a the word hag carries a lot of weight on Scarlands, but a old crone
yeah,
with vulture wings, and she's the goddess of assassins. She's the goddess of lycanthropes, particularly werewolves, and any other like evil were creatures. And she's very complicated, I would say, and I can just talk about Bellsmith for hours. I am not kidding. There's so much I got on her. Bellsmith. Harpies. She's a lot of harpy followers.
yeah.
But not hags, because hags are definitely Mormo, definitely Titan spawn. So, her hell is like when you think of the hells, and I haven't talked about the outer planes. I could talk about them, I guess, later. But hers is kind of sits between Vangel's Abyss, which is feels like the traditional abyss of D&D, and Chardoon's Hell, which feels like the traditional hell of D&D. Bellsmith's is unique. It's not. It doesn't have a paradigm in the other D&D outer realms. It's this like dark jungle of darkness. But her other realm that she's actually way more known for is the moon, and she has a whole castle and fortress on her moon, not the nameless orb, the other moon. It's known as Bellsmith's moon. It's the nearer moon. It was once called the verdant moon before Gorak got there and ate everything.
Nom nom nom, right?
Nom nom nom. So it does have an atmosphere. There is some mild plant life, but it's it's dark and dusty and very arid desert kind of environment. And she basically sits on her throne and overlooks. I envision it was probably like a skylight opens in her. I don't know how this works, but that it like opens up and she looks up at the sky and which looks down on Scar.
Right.
That's the way I picture it.
Totally.
I don't know if that's how it works, but she's got this massive fortress in the moon, and she's all these weird moon creatures that are up there, these moon giants. But her followers, there's one country on Gelspad that it is major followers of Bellsmith, and that's New Veneer, which book 2 of Through Shadows and Dreams takes place in New Veneer. So it's no reason why I'm so deep into Bellsmith right now. And they actually, the current Prince Erlis, who is the current ruler of New Veneer, prefers Idra. He's just like, let's have an orgy. Bellsmith pretty much controls most of the government. Her church there is super powerful, the Ebon Church, and they kind of control most of the capital city in New Veneer, and pretty much have a lot of the power. And a lot of it's because when the followers of Chardoon took over Lageny, which is to the east of New Veneer, all the followers of Bellsmith fled west, and they fled into New Veneer, or Veneer at the time. The new was added thanks to the Calastians who took over, because New Veneer is part of the Calastian hegemony, but they didn't really take over the religion. So as much as the government came in from Calastia, Bellsmith is, kind of an ally to Chardoon, kind of. They've taken over, and it's the only place where you can pretty much see assassins running around, and while assassination certainly not legal, because the worship of Bellsmith is so open, it's kind of you're more likely to see that happening. And she has a very powerful cult of assassins that follow her called the Cult of the Ancients, and they're all nuts. So think like witches and warlocks and all of that stuff following her and just killing people for cash, but also for but mostly for killing people for the glory of Bellsmith, and they actually kill as part of the rituals of worshiping her. So it's really twisted stuff. She also has a major foothold in Shelzar, which that's in Keely's city.
Yeah.
But the seat of the Cult of the Ancients, or Assassins, is actually in Shelzar, hidden deep underground in the sewers. and you will find there's chapter houses of the Cult of the Ancients in just about every major city and area of Gauspad that isn't, North Korea. That probably, honestly, there probably is one in Duhane somewhere. I just have never, but certainly everywhere else there will be this underground bellsmith cult of crazy assassins looking for power. And she, if there's some kind of shit going down, Bellsmith Mate is probably behind it. Right. She's like got her fingers in everything. Vangel doesn't care. He just likes killing things. Chardoon is all about, order, and you know when Chardoon is coming. Bellsmith is the trickster evil. She's the manipulator. She's the one who gets into your head, and her followers get into your head, and that's I think that's what makes her interesting. I mean, she, in the original Forsaken series that came out about the Vladoin and bringing back the elf god and all that, Bellsmith was such a central figure in that series, as she manipulated Vladoin to try to bring the elf god Gendavius back her way. And she's just kind of a constant in that. She just has more interesting kids than any other major god of Skarn. and if we have time, I'll get into her kids a little bit. I don't know if we want to get there. And in terms of that, that's kind of Bellsmith. Her herald is this harpy.
So she was actually originally an astral diva. So going back to her being a trickster and like conning you into doing what she wants you to do.
Yep.
Sashane?
Sashane,
yeah. Sure. Was an astral diva. So, like lawful, good, shining beacon of hope and all that was in love with the mortal.
To twist it to neutral.
Yeah.
Because Bellsmith just gets into your head, gets into your heart, and manipulates you.
Yeah.
I love that about her. I absolutely love that about her. I she thinks she's wonderful. So just be careful. You worship Madriel,
right?
Could be Bellsmith in disguise. I've actually have this conceit that if you pray to, and this is totally me, 100% me. If you pray to Madriel at night, Bellsmith can hear the prayer. Doesn't mean she'll care, and doesn't mean Madriel won't hear it.
Right.
But it'll be the way I picture it is if you pray to Madriel at night, or if you pray to Bellsmith during the day, Madriel would hear it, and it would be picked up on their collar, on their
right. I don't know if a lot of people will get this
reference.
This. Right.
Yeah.
Back in the day when you had phones in your house, and you could pick up and listen to other people's calls.
Yeah, so this is the way you hold a phone now, right? It's like this, holding the cell phone. But everybody knows this universal means cell phone. Come on, it means phone. But the way I picture it is they get the message that they cross each other's messages. So you pray to the Madriel at night. Bellsmith would get the message and she forwarded along. I tell your people to stop praying. And then Madriel would be like, "Oh, I have prayers for you, Bellsmith, during the day. Here you go." Right. And she just hand them along. This is totally me. I'm not saying this is canon or anything, but I just love that sense of because they're so tied into each other,
right,
and they're so close that there's that overlap.
I like it.
Because one of them is all day and one of them is all night. So what happens there? Dawn and dusk could be interesting in terms of
the reception goes out just a little.
Yeah, but it can be well. Yeah, it's kind of interesting because you're always supposed to pray at dawn or midnight when you're a cleric, so or dawn or dusk or whatever.
Right.
It's which god is going to be listening. So if you're getting your prayers and you're a follower of Madriel, pray during the day, like dawn or noon.
Noon is safe. Yeah.
Noon is very safe. Don't wait. Yeah, wait till the sun is fully up. Good half an hour after dawn before you pray to Madriel, just in case.
I like it.
So that's my conceit. I have no idea if there's anything to it. Those are the 8 victor gods.
Cool.
They're known as the victor gods. They're the ones who really fought during the war.
Right.
They're the ones who were on the front lines, who triggered the war, who were involved in all but one all but one defeat of the Titan. There's 3 other gods that I consider at their level, or at least used to be at their level. And the reason I call this out is because of the parents and the origin of their birth. A little more than 3, but all of the victors were born on Mount Namul by Titans. There are 3 other gods born on Mount Namul by Titans, and then there's another group of entities born by Titans, although not on Mount Namul. Mesos and Mormo had another set of twins. They became gods of the Elves, of the Drendali Elves and the High Elves, Nathalos and Gendavius. Gendavius' name is lost in time and will not appear, and does not yet appear in the new lore, but if you that which abides, real name is Gendavius. And then we also have the neutral god who died at the beginning of the war, who I mentioned before, Arcanthus. And I don't know if we wanted to get into these 3 guys now or not.
Let's go ahead and talk about these 3, and then we'll save like demigods and the other stuff for another episode.
Another day. Okay, so starting with Gendavius then. I love Gendavius. There's a whole book series about him. And not written by me. the original books that came out in 2003. He was, like I said, the twin of Nathalos. He was born of Mormo and Mesos, and brother to Belsmith and Madriel. He's interesting because he went about things very differently than the other gods. Whereas when the other gods and their abusive parents, for the most part, fled to these outer planes and hid, and then had to come back and all of that, and they were gone for a really long time, Gendavius and Nathalos went about it a different way, and they pretended to be people. They literally were like, we're mortals. The Titans will never find us here. And they hid among the Elves. And Nathalos hid on Gelspad, and Gendavius hid in Termona. Not a lot is said about Nathalos. Really, but Gendavius has a lot, because the what I consider the really hard to read book, because it's a bit prone to error. It was one of the last ones that came out. Forsworn and the Forsaken talks about that, a lot of that history of Gendavius, and has dates that make no sense. But he hid among the Elves as a mortal, or as an elf. And at the time, the Elves' lives were ridiculous, so it was pretty easy to hide, because they could live up to hundreds and hundreds of years, so it was pretty easy for him to hide among them, and they'd be like, how come you're not getting older? Right. None of us are getting older, so it's fine. Because the Elves, basically, they didn't age at that time. They could be slain, and they could die of disease, but they didn't age. So it was really easy to just be like, I just haven't gotten a disease yet, I'm good about this. So he could hide among them for a really long time.
Yeah.
But he was super smart. He's a god, and he was super, super powerful in terms of like innate magic, and they were like, wow, this is really cool wizard guy who can do these things, and he's pretty cool. And they started, getting him involved in like the government and stuff, and he became an advisor to like the Empress because he's a cool guy, right? And they didn't know that he was a god. They just thought he's just a cool guy, right? And he's like, I'm just gonna be quiet about it.
Right.
There's dragons running around. He's like, yeah, I'm just gonna be quiet. There's these dragons. It's fine. Hi, I'm just a guy. You can just sort of hang out. And after a while, they're like, this guy seems to be particularly special. And eventually, he reveals himself. It's around the time when the gods start coming back. He reveals himself. I am a god. And they're like, cool. I'll be cool. And if you worship me, I'll be more powerful, and I can give you stuff. And they're like, cool. Right. So suddenly the Elves are like, we have a god now, I guess. And they started worshiping him, and lo and behold, Gendavius suddenly had clerics. But because of that, he walked among them. He was one of them in a way that none of the other... And presumably Nathalos did this too, in Gelspad, but we don't... Again, this is kind of more mystery.
Right.
But he walked among them, and he was once, and theoretically he should have been as powerful as the victors, but he never tapped into an outer realm, so he didn't get that extra boost. But he also has a crap ton of followers, because he's got the entire High Elf nation backing him up. But as mentioned before, he dies horribly in the Divine War. and gets his name ripped out and memories ripped out and everything scratched off and all of it's lost, and the people are just disparate. There's a whole story about him, and those novels are about Vladwin bringing him back and resurrecting him. Forsworn and Forsaken talks about a meta plot of how things would be in Hermana should Gendavius get resurrected, kind of completing the story laid out in those 3 books. There's no current plans in terms of meta plot for 5th edition at this time. We're really focusing on, and I say we in a loose sense because I'm not, I do not work for Onyx Path. I'm a freelancer. But in a broader community sense, creative community sense, we're really focused on Gelspad. We're not looking at Termana at this point. Obviously, you can do whatever you want in your own command. You want to bring Gendavius back, bring him back. But there's not a lot of focus there. So, and honestly, I really like the High Elves as the Forsaken Elves. I think they're super interesting as the Forsaken Elves. They're just so tragic and cool that I kind of like them on that level. So I kind of have a preference to keep them distraught and sad as much as I love Gendavius. And here's my joke about Gendavius. He's known by the elves as that which abides. And I can't help but to picture a young Jeff Bridges. And I think I'm the only one who does pictures young Jeff Bridges as in his dude form, but not in like bathrobe, the dude, but it's like the dude before he got utterly lazy, and like more of like his earlier films, like Starman or something. And that's how I picture Gendavius looks like with elf ears, So I can't help it.
That's fair. No, I think it's totally fair.
yeah. So that's what I picture him. So yeah, that's Gendavius, and then his twin brother Nathalos. Now this is one I pronounce wrong. Nathalos.
Yeah.
Thalos. I dropped that L because frankly it's hard to say.
It is.
Nathalos. Does that? He's the god of the underground elves of Gelspad. So his kingdom not nearly as big. There's a whole history in Forsworn and Forsaken of how the elves kingdoms broke up, and Nathalos sort of took his group and it kind of left the elves in a huff and wandered off to Gelspad and created their own kingdom. And there was like an island a la Atlantis that actually sank in the middle of that business. And there's this whole big story, but I'm not going to go into those details. But he goes off, creates this underground elven city, and they hang out near the dwarves in Gelspad, and he has his tragic story where he gets nearly killed during the war and becomes a golem basically. But again, if he connected to an outer plane, his story is not as clear. I kind of take it as conjecture that he did the same thing as Gendavius did in Head with the Elves.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem that he connected with an outer plane. He certainly doesn't have his own heaven, and it's apparent that he shares his heaven with Chardoon. That he had a kind of area in hell, which is pretty awful when you think about it. It's like the Drendali elves go to hell when they die. Okay, this sucks. But their culture has shifted, and I actually have my theory that Gendavius very chaotic, kind of good. Post his return, his heaven is part of Tanel's, and it maps that Tanel is the other god that the elves worship. I actually totally ship Gendavius and Tanel, by the way. I think they'd be a great couple. Tanel ever decided to have a second kid. Gendavius is a good catch. Matching alignment, all that. It's just me. But his Gendavius has a heaven in Tanel's heaven after his resurrection. And what I wonder about Nalathos is that, was it in Harada? Did it get shifted to hell when they went from, because originally the Drendali elves were really lawful neutral, not lawful evil, and it wasn't until his injury that their culture shifted. So I kind of wondered, did his heaven get kind of moved as a result of their culture shift, and going from more law to kind of more twisted? So I don't know. but that's where I go with.
Yeah.
That's what I assume is that they were in Harada's realm, and then they got moved to Chardoons as sort of a matter of course.
That was an awkward day because everyone showed up to their houses and their keys just didn't work anymore.
Yeah, it's like, no, sorry, you have to go to hell now. And they're like, what? Sorry, your people changed alignment, so you have to too. You know, that just sounds odd. Or maybe they're like given a choice. It's like, we can stay here, but you know, I don't know. It's like, you know, you're doing sums. And heaven, afterlife. I don't know. I have no idea. So there's that. And then I love the look of like, and he's the Loth. You know, they're the dark elves, so he's sort of the Loth of Skarn. But although Skarn has another Loth, which we can get into when we talk about the demigods later. But so he's considered a demigod, but I think he's a former potential high god who, due to circumstance, became a demigod. The last former high god was Ercanthus. I don't know if you have a picture of him.
I don't.
I don't know if there is a picture of him, actually.
I've never seen one.
I've never seen one either. And I have my giant own, and I talked about this already with the dragons. So Ercanthus, child of Deneb and Thulkas, he god of the elements, died at the beginning of the war. So I've already talked about Ercanthus to death. So and in my whole headcanon that he's the god of dragons, but that's totally me. Yeah. So he's the last who I would consider a major god. He had his own heaven. He really, in that regard, was as high up level as the 8 victors. He would have been the 9th victor if they hadn't killed him before the war. Yeah. So and he, I would say, established pretty solidly as a major god before his death. Whether he was the god of dragons or not, he was certainly the god of elements and neutrality. And then the very, very final things the Titans made without other interference are the Djinn Lords. They did not make them on Mount Namul, but they are the creation of multiple Titans getting together, doing essence exchange, or possibly doing the do, I don't know, but doing something. And they made these Djinn Lords. Based with 4 elements. The Djinn Lords do not live on Skarn, they live in the elemental planes. There's 6 elemental planes on Skarn, not 4, but the Djinn Lords only cover 4. They 4 standard: fire, earth, air, water, and they very, very much map to the Djinn of traditional D&D. And there a whole bunch of guys, and they were made by the Titans to rule those outer planes. Not necessarily made to rule the outer planes, but they made them, and then they ended up ruling the outer planes. They come into play a lot in terms of once you get into that epic level business and you start actually exploring those. Yeah. They certainly don't have much of a bearing in Galspad day to day. Certainly historically, they're used to the whole genie in a bottle thing. It's definitely a part of Scarland's lore, particularly in Shalzar. Yeah. And the Empire of Elves, and then where Shalzar, the empire that used to be where Shalzar is, historically, not today, but historically, they used to do a lot of stuff with Djinn magic and summon genies and all of that business. And the Djinn Lords took a lot more active interest in the goings on there. But they were trapped in their elemental planes at the beginning of the war. Like, we do not want you guys on either side of this battle, so we're just going to put you in your little boxes. Yeah. Put the Slaraceans in a box, put the Djinn Lords in a box, and then we'll fight it out. But you two are too much of a risk of whose side you're going to be on.
We're going to put the dragons in a box. Wait, where'd they go?
Yeah, the dragons found their own box. Yeah. So, but the Djinn Lords get into play in terms of, I think in terms of romantic interests for several of the gods. As you find that a lot of the demigods' other parent turns out to be one of the Djinn Lords. Gotcha. So it's like their usefulness in that play is like, oh, and your dad was a Djinn of water. So they come into play a lot in there. So they certainly have their rulers certainly are god level power, god level politics and interest, and certainly that. Even if they're not worshipped, they don't get the power like a god. So how their involvement plays, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so that they're the last thing I would consider the major powers.
Yeah.
So,
Although, I mean, so there are many demigods, and we won't talk about them today. That will be next episode.
Yeah, that's a whole episode. We could just talk about the demigods.
I feel like some of them do like kind of peak towards being almost a god because of their domains,
sure.
but they aren't the
they're not the victors. They don't
Right.
have heavens. They have purpose, and some of them have their own planes that they control. So there's the 4 transitive planes or occult planes that they that demigods are over, and so they're certainly have major influence. And there's a crap ton of demigods.
Right.
There's just like ridiculous number. So that just cover all sorts of stuff.
Right.
And their origins of the demigods are all over the place. But that's where I draw the line of what is the difference on Skarn between a greater god and a demigod. And I just say, if you're born of 2 or more titans, without some other thing getting involved,
Right.
you're a greater god. It's like where I draw. It's particularly if you were born on Mount Nimul. And then so that's the 8 victors plus the other 3 that I mentioned.
Yeah.
And then you've got the Jinn are sort of their own category, and then the rest are demigods.
Yeah.
And demigods could be Titan and a god, like Idra, or 2 gods, or a god and a Jinn lord, or a god who got bored. It was like, oh, I'm gonna make you a god now,
Right.
whatever. So, and we can get on with all this next time. But
Yeah.
the only thing I say, well, no, I could say a lot of things, but another thing of interest regarding the major gods of Skarn is they are definitely fallible. They are very, very imperfect.
Yeah.
These are not omniscient by any means, as much as Harada thinks he is. They are very powerful. They are not all powerful. They're not quite omnipotent. They did not create the universe, but they do run the universe. And at the end of the war, they go back to their heavens and hells and outer planes. They no longer walk Skarn. They only send their avatars now, who are diminished versions of them.
Right.
And that represent them, that they can see and feel through, but they can't. You kill the avatar, the god is still very much alive. They just can't walk on the surface of Skarn for however long it takes to build a new avatar, which is very inconsistent how long it takes to build a new avatar. It's like a week or a year or to 100 years. I don't know.
It just depends on the materials you have on hand.
I don't know how they determine how long it takes to build an avatar. I have my own theories about that. And they're busy, frankly, because Deneb, whose epoch it theoretically is asleep, healing the world, and they now have to run things. So they can't be. They even going on a little vacation in their avatar. Avatar's like a little portable sub that they, it's playing a video game. They don't have the time to do that like they used to because they're too busy trying to make the universe run, and they've got a whole divine plane to deal with, and then they've got all the, make the stars go in the right direction,
right.
and
who
and
knew
the sun.
all of this stuff was so much work.
Yeah, and Mesos had solo been doing it for millennia, so suddenly we have to.
Oh, crap.
So the major gods not involved in the day-to-day so much anymore. They send their heralds. They might, if you're super special, they might send an avatar. The demigods, though, they could be.
Yeah. Which we will talk about next Friday, ideally, as long as everything works out. So for today, thanks everybody for watching. I hope you learned a lot about. There's even things that I didn't know, mostly about like cities and stuff. But I was just like, oh, that's awesome. I'm going to use that. Sarah, tell us all about yourself and where to find you on the internet.
I'm Sarah Stewart. You can find me at morelikethisindustries.com, as well as Sarah Stewart on Facebook, and Katina S on Tumblr. I don't know who would look for me on Tumblr. I I'm the author of Vigilant, Book 1 of Through Shadows and Dreams, a Scarred Lands novel, as well as a contributor to the Story Scene Vault on Drive-Thru RPG. You can find Vigilant on Drive-Thru Fiction and Amazon and Barnes & Noble, if you care, as an ebook. Physical book, print on demand on Drive-Thru Fiction and Drive-Thru RPG. On Drive-Thru RPG, I have a couple of titles, including the Scarred Lands calendar, and
Which is awesome.
which people like, and we've certainly sold more copies, not than Vigilant, but than we expected, and the module Vigil Training Mission Maritime Patrol, or oh boy, what a bloody ordeal. And I'm actually actively working on a second title, potential follow-up to that, to Maritime Patrol.
Nice.
So yeah, see if I actually get it finished. It's like balanced day job with all this stuff and Corona, and it's like
right.
You just don't have the
absolutely.
You just don't have the spoons to get it all done.
But we need more time in the day. More time in the day.
No, I don't need more time. I need more energy in the day.
That's fair.
Yeah, I got plenty of time. It's just I got nothing to put into it. And you are?
Oh, and I am. Thanks for reminding me. I am Jeremy Hochhalter. You can find me on Twitter at WHPubs or at WHPublications.com. That's short for Wanderers Haven Publications, but that's a lot to mush into saying out loud. I'm on Facebook.com, WHPubs. And I also publish on Solution Vault and DM's Guild, so you can look for me there. I will post links for the post-show notes, and everyone can come and buy all of our goodies. Yay!
Link and subscribe!
Yay!
This is what you're supposed to say, right?
That's right. Yeah, feel free to follow on here, and you'll get notifications whenever we go live. Yay!
Yay!
Cool. Well, that's it for this week. Everyone stay safe, stay healthy, and we will see you next time for demigods and other powerful creatures of the world. Or something.
Or something.
Bye!
Bye!